Hello, flirties, and welcome to a brand new episode of Flirtation. Signing on here at Flirt Headquarters. My name is Benjamin. I'm the flirt coach. The conversation I have for you today with Dr. Ingrid Clayton, all about the fawn response, one of the big four trauma responses, but perhaps the most overlooked. You may know the other three as flight, fight, and freeze, but what about the fawn response? How do we develop this? What happens in the body when we experience a trauma, and how does the fawn response show up in dating and relationships? And what the heck can we do about it? So much goodness coming your way. But before we get there, thank you, truly, sincerely, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here, for being a part of these conversations and these episodes and this show we call Flirtations. I really appreciate all of your support, whether it's streams, listens, downloads, subscribes, ratings, reviews, comments, a thumbs up on YouTube, all the things. You can watch these full conversations on YouTube now, y'all. Yes, you can. I appreciate you just being here. Thank you so much. Please rate, review, subscribe to the show if you haven't already. If you have, thank you again. Thank you so much. And then share this episode or another favorite episode of the show with someone you want to share some BFE, big flirt energy with, or who maybe needs to hear some of the messages, insights, and takeaways in these conversations. All right, flirties, let's get into it now. The full conversation with Dr. Clayton coming next. Coming up on this episode of Flirtations, we welcome Dr. Ingrid Clayton to the show. Dr. Clayton is a clinical psychologist, speaker, and author of the brand new book, Fawning, Why the Need to Please Makes Us Lose Ourselves and How to Find Our Way Back. If you've ever found yourself people-pleasing, over-accommodating, or twisting into knots to keep the peace in dating and relationships, this episode is for you. Fawning is known as the fourth trauma response alongside fight, flight, and freeze, and it's one that often flies under the radar. It can look like kindness or care, but at its core, it's a survival strategy that leads to self-abandonment. In this conversation, we'll unpack what fawning really is, how it shows up in dating and relationships, the cost of constantly prioritizing others, and most importantly, how to begin the healing journey so you can show up in dating without losing yourself. Along the way, we'll also get into how fawning is different from people-pleasing and masking, what happens in the body during a trauma, and strategies for reclaiming the self. This one is about understanding the roots of the most overlooked trauma response and carving a path forward for healing. All right, flirties, let's do this and meet Dr. Clayton.
I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. Hello, my name is Benjamin. I'm the flirt coach and a gay Libra. Everyone has an inner flirt.
Hey, flirty.
Live, laugh, flirt.
Work the flirt.
Work the flirt. Delulu is the Salulu. Expert on the flirt.
Hey, flirty. There's always another flirt.
Everyone has an inner flirt. Get out of your head and into the flirt.
Flirties, on the show today, we welcome Dr. Ingrid Clayton. Dr. Clayton is a clinical psychologist, author, and speaker who specializes in trauma recovery, narcissistic abuse, and the fawning response. Her memoir, Believing Me, has resonated with thousands all over the world as she shared her own healing journey, and her new book, Fawning, Why the Need to Please Makes Us Lose Ourselves and How to Find Our Way Back, is out now. Here today to have a conversation with us about how the often overlooked survival strategy of fawning can show up in dating and relationships and what we can do about it, of course. Hi, Dr. Clayton, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for being on the show. I'm really excited. I've been following you for a while, and I love your work. Congratulations on the release of Fawning.
Thank you. I'm over the moon. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sure it's been a hectic time.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of fun getting a book out there. I'm just glad people can finally read it.
I'm curious to also to always learn a little bit about someone's creative process. So as we get into the About You section of the interview, I'm just curious what it was like. This is your third book.
Yeah.
But what's the process like, or kind of how do you go about this?
Yeah, well, yes, it is my third book, and each one has been so different. So my first book was based on my dissertation research into spiritual bypass and 12-step recovery. I was so fascinated, and I was very lucky to get to transform my dissertation into a book. It was like a million years ago now. And then I thought I'd never write another book. It was like one and done. That was it. And then, I don't know, 8 or 10 years now, I'm forgetting, shortly after my stepfather passed away, I was literally just being woken up in the middle of the night, like clockwork, like 3 a.m., time to get up. And I had to write down all of these memories from largely my childhood, but also my adulthood. And it was a process that went on for years and years until ultimately what happened is I could see my own story through a trauma therapist's eyes.
Oh,
and after sitting on various therapist couches for many years and taking all the trainings and doing all the workshops, I could finally validate my own story and see that I had complex trauma and I didn't even know it. And I thought, if I'm living with all of these unresolved sort of symptoms and I haven't really found the freedom from it that I would like to, and now I know what it is, how many people are living this way and don't realize it, right? Because trauma was still reserved for this idea of like these acute, very obvious events. It's a car crash, it's a natural disaster, or sexual assault. My story was much quieter than that in a way, right? As is true for most people. It's like if you have, emotional abuse or narcissistic abuse, neglect, all of these things that I had, it sort of felt like, well, Benjamin, I don't have real trauma, right? But what we now know with complex trauma is, yes, you do. The body metabolizes those day in, day out experiences over time the same way that it does these acute events. And so I self-published my memoir after working on it for 5 years. It was the best thing I ever did, in part because, and this sort of speaks to the Fawning book, rather than waiting for someone else to validate me and my story and what happened and to say that it mattered, I had to take it in my own hands and say, yes, it does. And even if nobody reads this, I'm doing it for me. And so it wasn't even just writing the book that freed me, but it was taking it that next level and saying, I'm going to self-publish it, even if I'm the only person who reads it. And of course, that's not what happened. But
many people read it.
Yes, but still, the essence of it was like having my own back, showing up for myself in a bigger way than I ever had before. And it was really that book that led to this opportunity now with Penguin Random House to do a deep, deep dive on the fawn response, because that thread, of course, was woven into my memoir.
Yes. And we're going to get to the fawn response and what that is, getting into trauma and complex trauma, how the fawn response may be different than people pleasing. Lots coming today, but I want to hear a little bit more about your story and your memoir, Believing Me, and just what that experience was like. Like, we sometimes gaslight ourselves a little bit, right? Like, 100%. Oh, it wasn't that bad.
Yes.
Or, oh, well, they have it worse.
Yes.
But as we start to it might be self-awareness. It might be just giving ourselves permission to feel. It might be just getting back into our body, so to speak. Like, what was that experience like for you of writing Believing Me?
I mean, depending on the day, there were days that I would like shake my fist at the universe, like, take away this obsession. I don't want to do it. What is this for? Right. And then I would wake up the next morning and it's like, I have to keep going. It was truly a calling. And actually, I see this a lot with the clients that I work with, is that your healing process will reveal itself. And often it's in this very unique, very personal way for you. So mine happened to be sort of, fleshing out my story over years in the writing process. But I can see now that, we say that the senses are the language of the nervous system. And one of the modalities that I use in my practice is EMDR, which we use bilateral stimulation, which is right, left rhythmic patterns in order to help the brain process traumatic memories and move them into sort of logical, rational memory. And I realize now that even through the writing process of mapping out these memories, almost like a scene when you're writing, I had to bring my senses online. What did I see? What was I noticing? I'm writing about it and I'm typing, which is right, left, bilateral stimulation, right? I didn't think about these things at the time, but in hindsight, I go, oh my gosh, isn't it sort of genius how this all hangs together? And there was something about seeing my distant past, really my childhood, sitting next to what was a lifetime really of these heartbreaking relationships. I just felt like I cannot have a healthy relationship to save my life. I lived there for so long and I didn't know why. And suddenly having these things sit next to each other in story form, I could see the connective tissue in a way. But to another point that you're making in terms of maybe not being able to see it or self-gaslighting, trauma is not defined by the event. And I think this is where a lot of us get stuck. We go, well, was that event bad enough? Really, 10 different people could experience the same exact event, and some would walk away with trauma and some would not, right? It comes down to all these other particulars and personality and the resources that you had at the time, like what enabled you to kind of get through unscathed. So the markers really for trauma are more about the symptoms that you're living with now.
Okay.
So I didn't even really need to go back and flesh out my story as much as if I had just continued, if I had honored the symptoms that I was still living with, the whole story was right there in black and white, like my hypervigilance, like, attuning to you and your nervous system and what do you need and caretaking. And like I said, the inability to have a healthy dating life. The writing was on the wall.
Yeah. All right. This is really interesting. I'm connecting a few new dots here where the trauma, it's not about the specific event as much as it is about how you experience it and then how you continue to perhaps re-experience it in the present moment.
That's right. It's how the event overwhelms your nervous
system.
Right. And part of that overwhelm is that the past still feels intrusive. It doesn't actually move to past tense at all. It feels like it's happening now. It's happening now. And if I feel like it's happening now, well, guess what I need? I need a little defending from that.
Yes.
Enter the trauma response, right?
Okay.
Trauma responses are designed, they're hardwired, they're built into our beings to protect us from threat.
Yeah.
So if I'm not only living in a constant experience of feeling threatened in my own home, right? But now I have this constant overwhelm in my body. It makes sense that a chronic trauma response is now in the driver's seat, almost like defending me before I get out of bed in the morning. Whether I'm in a safe or unsafe environment, it does not matter. My body's like, I'm not going to let that happen again.
Okay. And the trauma responses, there are the big three, but really the big four, where I feel like the ones we've heard of are fright, flight, freeze, but your new book, all about the fawning response.
I love hearing you call it the big four. I have not heard that yet, and that's going to be my favorite thing.
Oh, fantastic.
It was like all of us have heard of fight, flight, and freeze, right?
Yes.
It's like, okay, forever. And then one day it was like, psychology as a whole, the mental health field decided to finally give some credibility to the fawn response. And I'm so grateful because in terms of relational trauma, it's the most common. It's so pervasive. It's the one, in part because we weren't sort of naming and honoring it, but it's also the one that kind of hides in plain sight. So when you think about the fight response, it seems like that it's an obvious trauma response, right? There's like an outburst of saying, no, I don't want this thing. There's aggression or physical behavior that feels congruent, right?
Okay.
Same with the flight response. It's like, I'm out of here, Freeze, it's actually has some similar properties with fawn, but fawn tends to happen, like I said, in these ongoing relational situations where you have to show up, right? You have to, get out of bed and show up for work or school, or whatever it is. And so it has us leaning into the very relationships that are causing us harm. So it looks like, well, did you ask for it? Are you wanting it? Are you condoning it? It's like, no. I'm leaning in because it's my last chance at hopefully lessening the threat that my body knows is coming for me.
Okay. Yeah. And what are some of actually, I want to ask this kind of clarifying question here about trauma I think sometimes, and I know I've done this, we look to like that one thing or the one event. Maybe we push it into our subconscious, but trauma can happen. Like it may be something that you experience over and over again. If it's in your familial dynamics, in your familiar relationships, maybe a romantic relationship. And so I want to talk a little bit about how, what if, or does it matter if it's a trauma we maybe experience over and over again? Like, does trauma kind of build on itself, and can trauma happen in all stages of our lives?
Yes, I want to say it's a yes, and that we know that once you have experienced trauma, it's sort of like the brain and body are looking for any evidence to go, oh, it's happening again. And it starts to kind of like calcify and build on itself. And it can happen in any context. It can happen in childhood. It can happen in a toxic workplace. It can happen in dating and relationships. It can happen in larger communities, in religious trauma, or, think about Fawning in particular, this idea that in order to belong to the community that maybe holds my whole world, I have to disavow all these aspects of myself. It's any time that we're in this double bind where I need the job, or I need my caregivers, or, whatever it is. But in order to maintain that connection, I'm losing access to my whole self. That's the bind that we are in. And I say, the body will always choose safety and survival over self. It doesn't care about your opinion or your goals. This is reflexive, hardwired survival, right? And to me, that aspect of Fawning was the thing that finally allowed me to make sense to myself, because you say to people, well, Benjamin, just set a boundary, Just, why would you care what someone thinks about you? Just raise your self-esteem. And then I go, oh, okay, how many affirmations do I have to do to raise my self-esteem? Right? How many workshops do I have to go to until I feel good about myself? And those things never worked. And now I know why. Because there was a deeper, more primitive, more complex thing going on that doesn't care about my opinions of a thing. So we have to go into the body, go into the roots of these behaviors. That's where healing has to lie. And then at the end of that process, maybe we have more capacity to set boundaries and have a voice. But when we start there, we're setting people up for failure.
Okay. All right, let's spend some time now looking into or describing what the fawn response looks like, because I know there's going to be some questions where, like, some of the words that I heard you mention so far are this like attunement, kind of this very much like noticing the needs of others, and in dating and relationships on the surface, that's not bad.
That's right.
Right. So when does it become the fawn response? When does it become about kind of that, the problematic, that re-experiencing of what is a trauma?
So it can show up in different ways. It's context dependent, but generally speaking, there tends to be an appeasement quality, like who you need me to be, right? And a caretaking component on the other hand. So the caretaking might be like, well, you're totally unavailable or neglectful or absent. So I'm going to kind of show up for you, do the work for you. I'm carrying all the load. I'm going to endow you with resources you don't even have. I'm sort of hoping and waiting that you're going to come online and sort of stand in the trenches with me. The difference is essentially that when we are fawning, we don't feel like we have a choice. It's like your needs are the priority. And it actually feels like, I hope that my needs will be met if your needs will be met, but I must prioritize your needs first. But what happens in that cycle is essentially self-abandonment. And it can leave us waiting a long time to have our needs met. But it's with this feeling of like, well, but it's going to happen any minute now, right? So to your point, yes, a lot of these qualities that what I call fawners, chronic fawners have, right? We are the cheerleaders. We are generous. We volunteer. We're open-hearted. We can feel your feelings and we can get in there. Quite frankly, it's what led me to be a therapist, right? It's sort of like, I'm good at my job, probably in some part due to my education, but largely it's my long-term training as a chronic fawner of going, I can feel what you're feeling almost before you're even feeling it. And these are wonderful qualities. but they have been hijacked by the fawn response where we almost don't get to exist without them. So one of the ways that I talk about fawning, it's like our whole sense of safety is outside of our body, right? So it's like, do you like me? Do you give me permission? Do you validate me? And the problem with that is there's no me in that equation.
I see. Okay.
So when you think about dating, we're way more interested in like, do they like me? Than we even have time to wonder and be curious, what do I even like about them? Mm-hmm. And I think this is sort of common. I mean, everyone probably has a slice of this experience, but when we're caught in a chronic fawn response, the reason that it's so entrenched is because it's related to our safety, right? We really feel like my sense of safety in the world is in your hands, is in being chosen, as it were, right? As though this is going to even break a spell, maybe a childhood spell of no one chose me in my childhood and this is the do-over. And it's kind of the recipe for trauma reenactment, as I say it out loud. I'm realizing that we're sort of leading into that territory. But that's the biggest difference. It's sort of, do I feel like if I wasn't being so generous and kind and curious and tell me all about you, do I feel like I could still exist in this relationship without it? Or what would happen if I didn't agree? If I had a difference of opinion, or if I thought the person across from me was being an asshole, right? It's like, am I allowed to be a whole person?
Okay. All right. So a couple of the key distinctions I feel like I'm hearing are that fawn response being about survival in many ways, looking for that safety, also feeling like you don't have a choice, almost like it's an instinct to do that. And this complete like externally driven, externally focused kind of mindset where, yes, it's about do they like me versus do I like them, but also everything becomes about the other person, right? What do you want? What do you need? What kind of dates do you want to go on? When are you unavailable? That's when I'll be available.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, you painted the perfect picture. Yes.
Okay, good. Because there's people don't talk a lot about this.
I know.
I think the only one. Right?
There's a few of us now, but we're leading the charge for sure. Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to, as we do on flirtations, like talk about sometimes the same thing, fawning. In a few different ways, because I know I need to hear it from a few different perspectives. And so one of the follow-up questions here that I know the flirties are wondering is, how is this different from people pleasing? Or are they maybe one and the same?
It's such a great question and a common one. And this is my answer thus far. And we'll see if any new information comes down the road. But in my experience, in my client's experience, I think fawning is the heartbeat of things like people pleasing and even codependency, right?
Okay.
To me, this is the lens and language that we've had for a long time. It covers some ground. It's very useful. People see themselves reflected. But what's gone missing in both of these terms, people pleasing and codependency, for me, is broadening the context out in two directions. One is back into my physiology, right? That I have a nervous system. There's deeper roots to the people pleasing than certainly me just wanting everyone to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not a conscious choice, in other words, right?
Okay.
People pleasing can feel like, well, come on already, just stop doing that. And it's like, well, if I could, I would have. Of course, that makes sense. But it also, fawning extends the context in the other direction, which is the context. It's actually the systems, whether it's a family system, the relationship, like I referred to, communities, all these systems of power. Okay. If you think about patriarchy and people of color and on and on and on, I list many examples in the book. But the truth is, our bodies understand that we exist in a pecking order and that all of the options available to some people in terms of how they show up in the world and bring them full selves are not available to me. So in other words, the fawn response is not only supported, oftentimes it's expected, right? It's sort of like, your place in the world and what's going to keep you safe and when you're going to step over the line. And so fawning for me, it just allows us to see this bigger picture and go, well, of course my body fawned. Why wouldn't it fawn? If you look at not only my hardwiring, right, that we are hardwired for relationship and to stay safe. And I live in all of these contexts, right, that maybe I've even been conditioned since birth to say, well, go give your creepy uncle a kiss and a hug anyway. And we'll just smile and be doting and be thankful. Or in order to be in this community, you have to, this is how we behave, right? There's just a million messages day in, day out that have primed us to be fawners. And it takes away the shame that a lot of my clients have felt about, like, well, am I a people pleaser or, codependent? Codependency was originally referred to in the disease model as a complement to addiction, right? And so now I have a disease and now I'm really broken. Oh, and I just love to control. It's like my clients were not aiming to please or control. They were aiming to feel more safe. So many of us have been told, like I said, in a million different ways, you're on the margins. And if you're on the margins, your body knows, okay, I better learn how to sort of mask or shapeshift in order to feel safer.
So are there certain groups that may be more prone to fawning as a trauma response? Like if they've experienced a trauma?
Well, yeah, and in essence, I think we've just covered a lot of them. I think it's all marginalized people, right? Unless you're at the very top of the food chain, what do you have to worry about? I always think it's interesting when someone's like fawning, like, what's that? Or they cannot wrap their head around why you would smile when someone is like aggressively hitting on you and they're creepy. And I'm like, well, God bless you. It's because you've never been in that position. You haven't been in those shoes. You've never been disempowered a day in your life. And okay, that's cool. But don't now be telling those of us that have been that we're meant to do it any differently.
Exactly. All right, I'm curious, what happens in the body to, like, going back to maybe when the trauma is happening, or if it's a repeat trauma, like what happens in the body in that moment to develop a fawn response as opposed to maybe that freeze response or the flight or fright response? Like, I know we've been talking about it, but I just want to go back like to the moment a trauma happens and like how the body might react in that moment to then become more of that fawn response later.
So it's so fascinating. The body chooses, like, in a nanosecond what response feels like it might be the most successful. Wow, and some of that is based on what worked in the past. So a part of my experience, and I think this is a common experience, is that maybe you did, for instance, try to lean into a healthy fight response, which might be speaking up and saying, this isn't okay, or I need help. And in my case, when I did that, it made things worse. It made things so much worse. And so many of my clients and people that I've connected with online have a similar story to tell, right? And so our bodies know the fight response is not available. So it also just tends to be the body remembers, right? It's like, oh, this is the one that worked best the last time. Oh, okay, let's just keep this on board. And so, that being said, it's not like the body chooses one response. And we still have access to all the others. Ultimately, ideally, we're meant to have some flexibility to move in and out of these things. We're certainly not meant to live there 24/7, which is, I think, sadly, what a lot of us have experienced. And we just think it's my personality. No, I'm just super friendly, right? No, I love helping people and prioritizing you and waiting for my self-worth to be validated because someone else has finally chosen me back. It's like,
right. I'm curious now because I want to hear maybe about some of the differences between fawning and masking. I think some of the flirties might be wondering about that distinction because they probably have some awareness around masking. They're like, oh yeah, I do this all the time. And then there's also this notion where when we're dating, we kind of, we put on our best foot forward, so to speak, right?
Yeah. Are you referring to masking from a neurodivergence perspective, or tell me what your lens and language is?
I am thinking of it from the neurodivergent perspective, yes.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I really defer to that community to answer this question, but I will say that for a lot of folks, they say masking and fawning is one in the same. It is an instinctual knowing I cannot be my whole self in this situation. In order for me to get my basic needs met, I need to play your game, right?
Yeah.
But there are some folks that they do create some level of distinction, and it's not my scope, so I don't want to, again, speak for that community, but they do kind of put a finer point on certain things. But on the whole, it seems like we're talking about the same thing, masking and fawning. And I would even say code switching, right? So for people of color that go into a different community and suddenly they have a different tone and they use different language. Similarly, I have clients of color in my practice. And when we started talking about fawning, they were like, oh yeah, this seems a whole lot like code switching. And it was like, well, yeah, right. But what I actually appreciate about those terms, both masking and code switching, is that they do honor the context. You know that someone has to code switch for a reason, similarly with masking. Whereas people pleasing just sounds like, well, you're just dysfunctional. Just knock it off already. You know what I mean? So I really appreciate grounding things in the lived experience, the reality of the full lived experience.
Yeah. Okay. Really, really important. I'm so glad you mentioned code switching. And I know some of the queer flirties listening are like, yep, do this all the time.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have one more question here about the difference between a fawn response, because I also feel like I heard a lot of similarities between fawning and maybe anxious attachment.
Yes. So I think you can lay attachment theory right on top of what we know about the trauma responses. That has never been my lens through attachment theory. But yes, I think there's a 1-to-1 there. I just appreciate that when we talk about trauma and the trauma responses, again, it's putting things back in not just our body and our physiology, but in the environments that necessitated a response rather than I have an anxious attachment or I am avoidant. It's sort of like it's a fine point, but I think this is one that can really perpetuate shame for people, right? We don't fawn because we don't love ourselves. We fawn because we love ourselves a whole lot and the other options were not available, right? So this whole idea that like, why would you be so anxious or avoidant, or why would you people please? It's like you're missing that I was in a dysfunctional environment that necessitated these instincts to come online. And over time, it necessitated a pattern of these things. And now you're just saying, I'm dysfunctional. You're taking all the dysfunction from the environment and you're placing it back in my body. And this is why so many people have come to me and said, I'm just broken. Right? I'm broken. I have a broken picker. There's something wrong with me. And I go, you know what? There is nothing wrong with you. You have a body with hardwired operating instructions that did exactly what it was meant to do. Let's be grateful for that first. And I'm not sure that they hold that sort of reverence when we talk about attachment theory for like, yes, this makes sense that you did that. I'm so grateful that I fawned in all of the situations that my safety was genuinely threatened. We're not meant to get rid of our trauma responses, right? And we are also not meant to live within that framework day in and day out. And so I do want us to move towards more flexibility, certainly, but it has to start from a place of going, I made sense to begin with. There's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah, and I love that your work and the frameworks you work with really help people move beyond that place of shame, like something's wrong with me, like I'm broken. And so now as we transition the rest of the conversation to talk about some of those healing strategies, I want to start with like, what happens when you start to come into awareness, like with people you work with, of like, wait, I was so convinced for so long, right? Something was wrong with me. I was looking for the fix, the solution, right?
Yes.
And then realizing that, there was nothing to quote unquote fix in the first place.
Right.
What?
It's a bit of a mind fuck. Can I say that? But it's also,
because it's exactly that.
Yes. It's also so heartbreaking. It's why, as a therapist, I tend to lead with my personal experience. I really try just to be a human being in the room, because otherwise I'm playing into the same thing that you're talking about, this cycle. It's like we're chasing our own tail. What's wrong with me? What's the answer? What should I do next? Do you have the answer, Ingrid? Will you give me the stamp of approval? Tell me, right? And what we're doing as coaches and therapists when we participate in that dance is we're perpetuating the need to fawn, because now the wisdom doesn't reside in your body. It resides in mine, right? So once again, it's external to you. You can't really trust yourself. I'm the expert that has it all figured out. And I don't know about you, but I'm sorry. I've met a lot of people that are doing wonderful work and they're super helpful, and they still have a body and they don't have it all figured out all the time. Let's stop pretending. That's the other thing that's keeping people so stuck, is they're like, well, why can't I achieve what that person has achieved? I'm like, you mean their curated like marketing message? You know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean.
So just this idea, I mean, the eyes like bulge out of their heads when they kind of really grok this, like, wait a second, you mean even mental health has kept me stuck by convincing me that there was another solution or another path or another thing if I try. And I go, yeah. And believe me, I was chasing my tail right alongside you. Why did I get 3 degrees in psychology, right? It was part of that very same, like, maybe I'll get the answer and then I'll finally be normal, whatever that means. It's just a lie.
Yeah. I can relate. I can relate to that so hard. I want to get to a couple more questions. One that's on my mind is, a moment ago you mentioned, and this was just sort of like talking about the eyes bulging out of your head. Like, what? When you said the fawn response is really a love for the self.
Yes.
In many ways. But I'm also trying to balance that with this notion that fawning can also cause a loss of the self.
I know.
How can we sit with those two truths?
Well, I'm going to answer that, but I want to say that actually I think what I also love about looking at fawning is this paradigm shift where we are moving out of binary options in like a million different ways. It's not like I'm healed or I'm fucked, right? Or like I'm safe or I'm unsafe. It's sort of like, it's all of this messy middle gray area of goodness that's, that we're all living and swimming in every day, but we want to button up and pretend that it's different. And I think what you're saying is the fawn response, it is about survival. It is about the body turning to the most likely response to lower the threat as much as possible. Grateful for it. And it becomes maladaptive when fawning is there no matter what is happening in my life, right? It's sort of like I'm fawning before I even have a sense of, is this a safe situation? Is this a safe relationship? It's like I don't even bring myself to the table to find out, right? And underneath every sign and symptom of the fawn response is this level of self-abandonment. And you see, it makes sense, right? Like if I'm attuning to the person that's like coming for me and closing me in, and I'm like, no. Remember, I'm a person and I'm tap dancing and I'm doing all the things to try to like, keep them at bay. Obviously, I'm having to abandon the part of me that's like, this person is an asshole and I want them to go away. And we're kind of overriding those larger values, but it's still the best thing we can do at the time. So ongoing, when you're overriding your values and your opinion for so long to where you don't even know what these things are, like to me, it's the most heartbreaking thing there is. So Fawning is a hybrid response. I'll just say this. Maybe this definition will make that picture a little more clear. Hybrid in that one part is a fight-flight energy, the sympathetic nervous system. It's very mobilizing. It's engaging. It's the part that leans into the relationship, right? But the other half of that equation is this hypoarousal. There's a dissociation. There's a disconnection from self, and these are happening at the same time. So long term, this disconnection from self is the most heartbreaking thing, right? And so meanwhile, they're coming in going, well, I'm so broken. What's wrong with me? I'm like, there's nothing wrong with you. You just don't have access to all of you. And when we have more access to all of you, it's like everything sort of comes back online, not just your boundaries, but your joy and your creativity and your, right? It's like you feel alive. You're not just pretending and playing at a life. Like maybe if I get these titles or this house or this boyfriend, then I'll be okay. It's like you are living a life, regardless of what those external markers are that someone else can perceive as you're doing well. It's like you could have none of those things and be the happiest you've ever been because you have yourself. You're the center of your own experience. That's the point, right, of healing to me is reclaiming the self. And when you do that, it makes all kinds of relationships possible that were never possible before.
Wow. Reclaiming the self and just regaining access to all of you, those parts that have been shut down or shut off. I know the flirties, I can relate to the disassociation piece. And I imagine those that feel like they're hearing their experiences in this fawn response. We like, right, is my picker broken? Like we're probably, it makes sense. We're picking not the best partners, probably.
Yes. Well, and also this is my experience, but this also gave me so much relief when I sort of understood it from this place that my entire sense of safety in childhood was built in a scenario where I was being exploited, neglected, and abused. So this is my roadmap, right? This is the blueprint. So guess what I need, Benjamin, when I go out into the world in order to feel the safest that I've ever felt in my entire life? I need relationships and environments that exploit and trigger. And right. So all of a sudden I go, well, no wonder I'm leaning back into those scenarios. And then you lay on top of that what we know about trauma reenactment, which is essentially the body going, just give me one more shot. I'm going to get it right this time. Right. I'm going to figure it out. I promise. That we feel that chemistry, the recipe, the kindling of our history. And we go, oh, it's like this do-over when you feel that rush of like, you know, I've lived there for a long time. That feeling.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. It's
the
like
crazy chemistry. Well, I was calling it crazy for a reason because it was grounded more in a reenactment than it was the ease and the stability and of being in a reciprocal, healthy relationship that didn't ignite all of that stuff.
Yeah, and perhaps wanting to have that corrective experience. I think a lot of us with trauma have of like, if I could just if I can't fix the past, but I could like somehow, if I could do the same thing maybe, but get a different result. Yes.
And we say that saying, you know, oh, that's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, which is true. But when I go, but here's why that makes sense, right? It's like survival of the fittest. Like, you know, the body's just seeking. It's not even paying attention to what's working. It's paying attention to what didn't so that we could like unlock it and do it differently. Right. Only it's not understanding the bigger picture that unlocking it in this case means walking away. You know, that's doing it differently. Not trying to sort of, have them finally have the unavailable person choose me back and it's going to change my whole life.
Oh my gosh. All right. Before I send all the flirties your way to pick up the book, we got to end here. I mean, we're talking about it now, but healing, right?
Yes.
So I think, given the flirties some great mindset shift, a few things they can do, but want to settle here on a few strategies to reclaim the self, right? Reconnect to all those parts of you that may have been disconnected for a little while.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Well, and in essence, we're taking that external focus and we're bringing it internal. So
Yeah.
one of the quickest and easiest ways to do that, you can do it right now. I'll give you two things, actually, my favorite things that I do with everyone.
Okay.
One is putting your own hand on your own heart. And if you do it skin to skin, like you do when a baby is born, you pick them up and you plop them on your chest, that releases oxytocin. And that's that feel-good bonding hormone. And this releases it by ourselves, for ourselves. And it's just this stance of self-compassion, like I exist. My body immediately changes when I do this. I just feel differently in my own skin. And both of us, we took a spontaneous deep breath, which means we're moving into more regulation.
Oh,
right?
my God. Yeah, I did that subconsciously. I wasn't even thinking.
That's right. And it was spontaneous, which also tells you, oh, it's working, right? So that's more regulation, more attunement, more I'm in the present tense. And a second thing that we can do, I referenced earlier, the senses are the language of the nervous system.
Yeah.
You think about the animal kingdom, right? The animals are constantly attuned to their environment at all times. It's what allows them to feel safe. Listen, most animals in the wild, they don't walk around traumatized, and they're literally being attacked. They're literally
every day,
right? And a part of that, the reason to that, I mean, we're sort of evolved in ways that you might make you wonder how evolved we actually are, because we've learned to override so many wonderful instincts. But we can use that wisdom from the animal kingdom and go, can I use my senses right now, no matter where I am? Just literally get out of autopilot and look around your room and notice what you see. Just visually orient. If you land on something that feels pleasant or neutral, let your eyes linger there. Maybe you take a breath and just notice what you're experiencing. You can try it with what you hear, what you feel, right? Smell, taste. These are ways to not just let your body know I'm safe. My body knows that I'm safe because I'm looking at this leaf out my window. I'm not like telling it, Ingrid, be safe right now. There's nothing going on. My body knows because it's able to linger on this leaf. And then that brings me into more present tense. So it's things like this that become the kindling for this reawakening this fire, right? Of like, who am I and how do I want to be in the world? But it starts in these small but mighty ways.
It's so true. I mean, it's all a practice, and sometimes we think like, oh, that doesn't matter, right? But it's about the intention. Like that is ultimately what it is. It's always about, I mean, this is not to get too yoga, but I'm a yoga teacher. And it's like, sometimes I'll see students get frustrated that like, they're not doing it like the other students, or, oh, they did better at this pose last week. It's like, wait a second, you showed up. It's not about the result. It's not about the outcome. It's about the intention. Pour your focus and your energy into that, and then allow yourself to have the experience, right? To look at the leaf, to now like, I'm going to go light a candle after this. It's getting into fall. I got my vanilla and my pumpkin and all the things. So, and part of this is allowing yourself to just let it get good, right?
I love you bringing in that language of intention and even the notion of yoga, of just being embodied, right? Being in the present moment. Maybe my body stretched that way yesterday, but look who I am today. Look how it is today, and honoring that very thing. These are all the building blocks.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Ingrid Clayton, this has been just a fantastic conversation. I thank you so much for spending the time with myself and with the Flirties today. The new book, Fawning, is out. Where can everyone find it? In all the places?
It is available in all the places, all the bookstores, online, Audible. I'm narrating the book wherever you can find it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Congratulations again for the Flirties that want to follow you, check out your work, your website. Where do you live on the internet?
Clayton.com, and just my name. And then, all the social media and book links and all that fun stuff is there too. And this was so much fun. We took a wild ride today. We covered a lot of territory.
That is what we do on Flirtations. I feel like sometimes I make spaghetti with my hands, as I'm doing right now. But you know what? We always come full circle. The dots connect.
Completely. It was fantastic.
We tell a story, and the story today was about fawning. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I'll have all those links in the show notes below for this episode and send the Flirties your way.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
All right, Flirties, that's a wrap on this episode of Flirtations, the fawn response episode of the program, getting into some trauma, some healing, and so much more today with Dr. Ingrid Clayton. Dr. Clayton, thank you so much for being on the show today. Y'all, her new book, Fawning, Why the Need to Please Makes Us Lose Ourselves and How to Find Our Way Back, is out. I got the links in the show notes below for this episode to check out the book, to follow Dr. Clayton, check out her website, learn more about her work, all the things. Dr. Clayton, thank you so much for being on the show today. Congratulations on the release of your newest book, your third one. All right, Flirties, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to these episodes wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing, streaming, watching, at the gym, cooking, in the car, on the way to work, school, whatever. Thank you. Yes. So much for being here. Please rate, review, subscribe to the show. If you haven't already, if you have, I greatly appreciate it. If you haven't, now is a fantastic time to drop 5 stars, a thumbs up, leave a comment perhaps on Spotify, YouTube, something. I appreciate it. And then share this episode or another favorite episode of the show with someone who maybe needs to hear a conversation about fawning or one of the many other episodes of the program. All right, signing off officially here at Flirt Headquarters. My name is Benjamin. I'm the Flirt Coach and Gay Libra. Flirty. Happy flirting.